All right, rock and roll. Welcome to the weekend. Welcome to the Scorched Earth Political Podcast. I am your host, John. And if you could hit that like and subscribe button, I wish I could get these ducks in the background to subscribe. Really, I would appreciate it. And if you want, leave a comment. I respond to them all personally. And let's get to it on the weekend. Let's burn it all to the effing ground. And I guess the biggest story right now is the Israeli Hamas agreement that seems to be getting closer and closer to actually being accomplished. Donald Trump in the last week with Benjamin Netanyahu forged an agreement. Basically, they said Hamas has to step aside, which I think is a really good thing. I think it's a good thing for the Palestinian people. I think it's good. It's a good way to stop the genocide. Basically, they have to give up the hostages. They have to leave. And then we're going to, quote unquote, have some type of Palestinian authority. Israel did back off on their demand to annex the West Bank. I actually applaud Donald Trump the other day when he said that's a non-starter. We're not going to do it. And basically the only reason they did that is because the UAE, which is the other power broker in the region, said that there is no agreement. They will pull out of the Abraham agreement that Jared Kushner and Donald Trump got signed. It's kind of a fickle agreement, but it is something on a piece of paper in his first administration. And obviously, he doesn't want to see that accomplishment go by the wayside because, we got to get that peace prize one way or another. And Donald Trump put out some posts on Friday morning. And honestly, I thought it was just the usual bluster. But here was what he said on True Social. All hell like no one has ever seen before will break out if they don't agree to an agreement by Sunday night. And if this is what it took to get Hamas off the schneid, okay, because too many innocent Palestinians are dying in Gaza each and every day. 12 are dying from starvation. Israel has literally created a humanitarian crisis, and that needs to end immediately. And it's like we've talked about before in this podcast. If you want to sit there and blame the Palestinian people for Hamas running them, then you want to blame the North Korean people for having Kim Jong as their leader, or the Chinese people for having President Xi. Look, these are dictators. They do what they want. The people are not responsible. There is no way the people can have any say in their autonomy or their future. Look, forget all the politics. These people want to eat. Do you really think that they want an entity running their government, their land, that starves them and their children? I mean, on Tuesday of this week, 36 Palestinians were killed by Israeli soldiers trying to access food stations. I mean, it's like we see it, we've talked about previously on CNN when one of the Palestinian men was saying, I've got a choice each and every day. I can go and try and get food, or I can watch my family starve. And he goes, when I go to get food, I have a very high risk of getting shot. Like, wow, there we go. Now, are any of these war crimes going to get adjudicated? No, because the victors get to do what they want. And 6 months ago, the UN basically said that the Palestine, the Gaza area, were famine and starvation zones. They were a humanitarian crisis like the world was really not seen in a long time, especially in this area, right? Well, Donald Trump continued on his rant on this True Social, and here's what really struck me. He said, all innocent Palestinians should leave areas that are under siege by Israel. First of all, the whole area is under siege by Israel. Israel controls everything. So is this your step one in ethnic cleansing? That really kind of struck me because we all know what he wants to do. He wants to level everything, get all the people, send them to Egypt, send them to Jordan, wherever the hell he's going to send them. They're not coming back. It's a one-way trip, right? And then he's going to build high-rise condos. He's going to redevelop the land. And then, I don't know. The Palestinian people have a right to stay in their country. They don't need to be exported. That's what ethnic cleansing is getting people off their indigenous land. Kind of like we did to the Indians, okay? But I digress. But here's the statement that really scared me at the end when Trump, on his True Social post, he said, everyone will be well cared for. Really? Really? So we're supposed to believe that this humanitarian crisis, this famine zone, that the United States has enabled Israel to perpetuate for the last 6 months, and now we're at 12 people a day dying from starvation, they're supposed to trust the U.S.? Now look, the Palestinian people don't give a care. They just want to get food, they want to get water. But, and I'm not vouching for Hamas. Oh, let's not get that in the equation. But if you're Hamas, are you really going to trust that statement? Like they're supposed to lay down their arms, give up the hostages, and leave. Well, when they leave, are we going to have Mossad chasing them down the street? I got a funny feeling there's a lot going on there. I do hope they come to an agreement because I think it's the best thing for the Palestinian people. But at the end of the day, the Palestinian people need their own state. They need their own government. They need their own self-sovereignty. And I don't know if this plan gets it there. I hope it does. And I honestly, if these Palestinian people can have their own government, their own right of determination, fine. Let's give Donald Trump the Peace Prize. I don't really care. Second question is, how come he's not doing this in Ukraine? How come Ukraine is such, what, is there some difference between what he perceives Hamas has done and what Russia has done? Why doesn't he put these ultimatums on Russia? I mean, literally, we're going into the Russian winter. I saw a website. I saw some information on Google. We're about within 30 days of the Russian winter. It always depends, climate change, whatever. But they're anticipating basically the 1st of November, we're going to have the Russian winter. And as Napoleon, as Hitler, as many people have found out, when you get into the Russian winter, you don't move. You don't go forward, you don't go backwards, you're entrenched till spring. Why do you think Russia invaded at the end of February, early March? Because it was the end of Russian winter. That's what they did. Is he going to do anything about Russia? Oh yeah, we're going to put a tariff on India because they're buying Russian oil, but we're not going to put the tariff on Russia. Russia has no tariffs. Okay, that really makes a lot of sense. But for this administration, it's just par for the course. All right, let's also talk about what happened Wednesday night in Chicago. And we had a couple Blackhawk helicopters. We had federal agents rappel out the side, literally like an action movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger would be incredibly proud. And they rappelled onto the roof of a Chicago apartment building, and they used flashbang grenades to get through the door, open up doors. Are they trying to save somebody from a heinous kidnapping? Nope. They're going after illegal immigrants. This just in, ICE, you can pull up in a car. It works pretty well too. So they dragged over 60 people out of their apartments. They just knocked down the doors. They just pulled people out, men, women, and children, in the middle of the night, some naked, pulled them out to the street, made over 35 arrests. But here's the thing, and I've seen this frequently, and I literally, if you have an idea what this is, please drop it in the comments. They put them, and ICE couldn't get these videos out quick enough on their website. These were all over the right-wing social media sites about the Blackhawk helicopters, and you want to see Tom Cruise jumping out or whatever it is. They were so proud of that. A Blackhawk helicopter costs somewhere between $15 and $25 million. So they're using some expensive hardware. But when they arrested the 30 plus illegal immigrants who were not doing any crimes, they were just sleeping, they put them in a U-Haul, a rented U-Haul. And I've seen that in Los Angeles. I've actually seen it twice, that ICE pulls up in their Escalades or their Suburbans. They all get out in their mask, they run, they capture them, and then they put them in the back of a U-Haul. And I'm trying to understand this logically. ICE's budget is bigger than the defense budget of Russia, Italy, and the UK combined. They can't afford some type of van or some type of apparatus that actually can humanely transport these people back to the ICE detention. They literally are putting these people in the back of a rented U-Haul. And I've seen this multiple times. And I don't know if it's the humiliation factor or what, but my God, you're putting them in the back of a U-Haul, pulling down the door and putting a padlock on it. Now, God forbid there's a fire or anything like that. How do you get these people out? I mean, what they are doing is illegal, but sometimes even the inhumanity baffles me. Like, they can't afford a bus. Like in Los Angeles, when I see prisoners getting transported from court to a jail, they're actually in a police bus. They've got seats, they've got, the windows so they can get fresh air, blah, blah, blah. They're literally taking these immigrants and putting them in the back of a rented U-Haul. Like, you've got $190 billion budget. Jesus, you can't get something with seats for these people? At the end, whether you're going to send them to San Salvador, you're going to send them to Botswana, you're going to send them to wherever, they're still people. Like, who gets off on that? And I saw them on the ICE website getting thrown into the rented U-Haul. Maybe with Trump's socialism, where he took a 10% stake in Intel, maybe somehow secretly he has stock, or he has a part of U-Haul, and this is his nefarious plan to pad the pockets even a little farther. But to me, it's just astonishing. And like I've said, I've seen this multiple times in Los Angeles, and I just don't understand why if they're going to pull up, why don't you just pull up with a bus? Why you got to pull up in a rented U-Haul? What are we, hobos? Christ's sake. Also, on Friday, we get another appearance by Pig Hegseth after his disastrous speech on Tuesday in Quantico, Virginia, where he tried to act like a man, and that failed. But on Friday, he announced that they had used a military strike on a third Venezuelan boat in the last month. He said it was a drug narcotics boat. His actual statement was, "Our intelligence, without a doubt, confirmed that the vessel was trafficking in narcotics." Now, first of all, when you use the word intelligence, don't ever use the word Pig Hegseth in the same sentence. It is an oxymoron, and he is the ultimate oxymoron, emphasis on moron. But he does this the third time with no evidence, and these boats have 8 to 10 people. Like, what drug boat is going to have 8 or 10 people? They're going to have 1 or 2 people. They're just trying to transport it. If they get caught, they get caught. Why would you put an extra 5 or 6 people out there? But Pig was talking about how they are increasing patrols in the Caribbean because of all these Venezuelan drug boats. And he said, this is a great line, that it is now an armed conflict with the cartels. Wow. If you allow that to be believable, and I'm not saying we do, what would stop him from going into Mexico? Because, he's in Venezuelan waters. That's actually their sovereign territory. They get 200 miles out from their border. From all indications, this drug boat got blown up 20 miles off the shore. I mean, where does it stop? Where does the criminality stop? I don't know. But it does seem to be pretty striking. Also, Pig Hegseth is talking about intelligence indicates, without a shadow of a doubt, it was a narcotics boat. Mr. Hegseth, is this the same intelligence that Donald Trump in 2018 in Helsinki, when he was standing next to his little buddy, Putin, said, "I don't believe U.S. intelligence"? Was this the U.S. intelligence that dropped the ball on 9/11? Was this the intelligence that for 2 years told us there was WMDs in Iraq? Saddam Hussein had biological weapons. We actually started 2 wars over it. We actually spent trillions of dollars that this just in could have paid for healthcare for every American for the next 50 years. It's funny, we don't have money for healthcare, but we always got money for war. But I digress. And we find out later there was no weapons of mass destruction. We found out that the intelligence, the Bush administration, which truly was the most failed presidency in my lifetime, literally did the propaganda. They propped it up with this intelligence, that intelligence. Look, if you got something real, show it to us. Show us real stuff. Don't do what you did to poor Colin Powell and give him propaganda, BS information, and make him prostitute himself on the world stage. And that's exactly what they did. And that's exactly what the Trump administration is doing now. They are saying that these boats are drugs. They're blowing them up with no evidence, no substantiation, anything. You know, it's kind of like the 2020 election. Oh, it's rigged. Well, there's no evidence. You know, they've had 5 years. Don't you think if they had any evidence, any type of credibility, they would have been in a court? We all know Donald Trump loves to live in court. He loves to threaten people. Let's go to court. Oh, yeah, court's also where he was found guilty of 34 felonies. But let's move on. Also, to wrap up the show, and I hope you all have a good weekend, it is amazing how many government websites we are seeing come online and blame the quote-unquote radical Democratic left for the government shutdown. And we've talked about this, about how this is a true violation of the Hatch Act, which says you cannot make government websites lean towards basically a political party. Well, obviously, Donald Trump has moved off that, and I would really be interested to see what the Supreme Court has to say. Personally, I think they are the concierge Supreme Court. They'll do whatever Donald Trump says, whatever it is. But really, are we at a point now, an inflection point, where honesty and neutrality and actual political ideas can stand for something without propaganda getting in the way? Have we passed that Rubicon? I don't know. It really worries me. And getting back to the government shutdown, Donald Trump on Friday, with his OMB ombudsman Voight, shut down another infrastructure project in Chicago. He's only picking on New York, New Jersey, Chicago. I'm sure California is going to be in the way. I'm sure Maryland's going to be in the way. I'm sure all these Democratic strongholds. And he's not touching anything, any type of infrastructure in the red states. And you know, there's going to be a day. The thing that always amazes me about this administration is they don't think they're ever going to be out of power. They don't think there's going to be a day. You know, it's like Ted Cruz, who I cannot stand. I loathe that guy. That guy is lint below my shoes. When he said about the FCC coming down on ABC, you know, about Jimmy Kimmel and saying, hey, we could do this the easy way or we could do this the hard way, basically threatening ABC affiliates' licenses if they didn't take Jimmy off the air. And Ted Cruz says, what happens when they're in power? You know, and he didn't really get down too deep on it, but we all don't understand what that is. Look, if I'm the president in 4 years, how you doing, Sean Hannity? I think it's time for you to go. Jesse Waters, bye-bye. See if we can get you in the back of a U-Haul. Let's just get all the Fox trash out. Let's do that. Newsmax too, but I'm not going to use a U-Haul for them. I'm just going to use a trash truck. All right, if you could, hit that like and subscribe button. It means a lot to us, and we'll see you soon on the Scorched Earth Political Podcast.